I'm preparing for my first Brewers Cup competition, but I don't have a coach and I don't work in the coffee industry and I definitely don't have unlimited time to train. So I realized pretty quickly that just brewing coffee every day isn't enough. If I want to get better, I need structure. So in this video, I want to show you how I'm approaching the Brewers Cup preparation, how I plan my training, what skills I'm focusing on, and how I try to improve them step by step. And just to be clear, this is my first Brewers Cup competition, so please don't mistake me for a professional competitor. This is just my journey and how I try to learn step by step. If you have competed before or you have inspiration how to improve these skills I'm mentioning in this video even better, please leave it down in the comments below. We all appreciate your comments and your inspiration so we can improve as well. So as this is my first Brewers Cup and I don't have a coach and I don't have a team, I knew I need some kind of structure how to train. This is what I learned in fitness training and strength training. You need a plan and you need to work structured towards your goal. Otherwise, you're just brewing coffee and hoping to get better. So the first thing I did, I knew I had a certain timeline. I had like 3 months of preparation. And now let's just say it's about 12 weeks and per week you're training 3 times. So until your competition, you have about 36 real training sessions you could do. And improvement is never random. You need to make these repetitions, these training sessions count. If you don't try to get better in these 36 training sessions, you won't. So I tried to figure out what I have to train for the Brewers Cup and to get a high score at the competition. Therefore, the first thing I did is to read all the rules and regulations of the Brewers Cup to understand the competition more deeply. And my next step was to print out this. This is the score sheet for the open service and there is another score sheet for the compulsory round. This score sheet tells you exactly what to train so you can get a high score at this competition. So the first part on the score sheet is the coffee evaluation. Here you get scores for aroma, flavor, aftertaste, acidity, sweetness, mouthfeel, and an overall score for this brew you are serving. So this contains, on the one hand, the quality of the coffee you're serving, but on the other hand, also your brewing skills, how well you prepared this specific coffee. So you have to make sure to buy a really high quality coffee and be really good in preparing it. The second part of this score sheet is the accuracy of the coffee descriptors. So you're describing the coffee in your presentation. And the better you can describe this coffee and the more accurate this is, the more points you will get in this section. So this is the sensory skills, how well you know your coffee and how good you can describe it. And the third part of this score sheet is the barista evaluation, which contains attention to detail, coffee knowledge, and presentation. So this is all about how you behave on stage, how well you're interacting with the judges, and how well your preparation is. So with all this information, how this competition actually works, I was able to back engineer on what areas I have to work to improve myself for this competition. The first area I defined was understanding coffee extraction, which is a really complex topic and hard to understand. Like how these variables influence your extraction, like grind size, dosage, ratio, water chemistry, agitation, flow rate, temperature. There are so many variables and how do they really influence your final cup? The second area, which is really important for competition, is recipe development. This is also important for the compulsory service, which we don't really discuss in this video. But recipe development is super important also for the open service. How can you design a recipe to highlight certain aspects of a coffee and how you still be able to brew it in parallel for 3 separate cups at this competition. The third part needs probably the most experience and the most time to develop. It's sensory skills, how to really taste coffee and understand how you describe these certain aspects of coffee. And the fourth area for me is competition skills. The overall workflow, the presentation, how consistent you are with brewing, and if you are able to replicate the cup you brewed in training on stage with music and judges watching. Now I know the 4 different areas where I want to work on my skills. For my preparation, I actually started with the 4th area. I started training my pouring consistency because this was a huge issue for myself pouring in 3 different brewers in parallel, like in a competition setting. It was so important to me to learn how to hit the grams and the timings with the kettle on the 3 different brewers in parallel, because only like this I can also do experiments with extraction and evaluate them properly. The second step for me was to find a competition recipe that just works for consistency, but also with different coffees, and that I can replicate for testings. At the moment, I'm working with a simple 4-pour structure. I have 14 grams of coffee in and then 4 pours of 50 grams of water. So with this recipe, it's quite easy for me to pour consistently and to prepare 3 brews at a time. And with slight changes to grind size, to the ratio and the water temperature, I can just manipulate my final brew enough so I can work out a great recipe for the final brew. The hardest part for myself to improve are the sensory skills. I visited Aga from Sheep and Raven, and I just learned that I have to do a lot more repetitions, do tastings with other people, and work step by step on how to describe coffees even better. I am not expecting to be perfect in sensory skills for this competition this year, but maybe in the following years I will get better and it might get easier to describe coffees accurately. The fourth part where I'm focusing right now are competition simulations, like trying a 30-minute compulsory round and working out the best recipe for a compulsory coffee, or doing my open service script with my 10-minute presentation word for word with music on. With these simulations, I can really work on the skills that I have to deliver on stage. And the closer you get to a competition, the more specific you want to train the skills that you need there. So the weeks before the competition, I will probably mainly focus on my open service and compulsory and not train anything else anymore. So I already know that I still have so much to learn about coffee to be good at coffee competitions and to be better at tasting and describing coffees. But for my first year in the Brewers Cup, I just want to give my very best and see how far this takes me. I really appreciate all the support I'm getting right now from local cafes and roasters, but also from people on Instagram who are rooting for me, but also giving me incredible good tips for my preparation. So right here, I'm documenting this for me, for my future self, but also for you, even in case you are also preparing for a Brewers Cup and searching for information how other people prepare. Because I wish that former champions like Martin Wölfel or Matt Winton also documented their journey to the Brewers Cup and not just after they won the competition. So if you like this journey and want to follow along how I place at the Austrian Brewers Cup and also how I develop my coffee skills in the next months and years, then just follow along, click the follow button of this account and see you the next time.